Hey everybody, welcome back to the Podcast Daily and welcome again to Indianapolis. Berm and I, Austin Ward, we are outside Lucas Oil Stadium. We're inside on Thursday. We saw Zach Harrison did not work out or run the 40. It was what we were most looking forward to outside of today's media session with the defensive backs, Ronnie Hickman and Cameron Brown, representing Ohio State. So a little bit of a buzzkill, Berm. I thought that was a surprising decision. You?
It's a head scratcher. I mean, if you are a guy who is needing a big performance in front of all the 32 NFL teams and national TV audience, you'd expect that to be the case. But we don't know his exact situation. Perhaps he was feeling not 100%. If that's the case, then you don't risk it out here and make yourself have a harder road to hoe when you do your workout at the Ohio State Pro Day in March. So. Yeah. I guess at this point, you come here, you get to meet people, they get to know you. Zach's a kid who's going to impress a lot of folks in interview sessions. He's extremely bright. Obviously, you know, his physical stature is unique. I think his wingspan and his arm length was longer than any defensive end since 2014. I believe I read that. That could be slightly incorrect, but you know that he's going to impress people in those ways. It's just weird to not work out. And I mean, that's an NFL thing, I guess, for me. Like, if you're the NFL and you invite 150 prospects to this event, they should be working out, every single one of them, unless they get hurt while they're here. So whatever, I don't run the NFL.
Yeah.
Maybe I should.
Maybe you should. I think we've talked about, there's a lot of things for the NFL that you could do. We've talked about that already. We're like, well, what kind of Freaky Friday content are we going to have? Well, we thought it was going to be Zach Harrison's 40 time. Turns out that will just not be the case. I bet that it's going to be pretty good at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center later on in March. But I think that was, like, we were sitting in there and it was unusual. We're not, usually the media is not allowed to go in there for some reason, even though they've been selling tickets. And this is a very strange event. So that was the first time, like, I know what happens. I've been here for more than a decade for the Combine, but like to go sit in there, they're not putting up times on the board. You know, there's everybody's in the opposite end zone, the fans that came to this. I think it's a really strange setup that they've got going in there. But the reason I say that is one of the main attractions. They kept putting Zach Harrison on the board and showing highlights before the defensive ends went out there to run and work out. It's like, Zach Harrison's about to do it, get excited. And it's like, Zach Harrison will not run the 40.
Or work out. It's weird. It's sort of like you said, it's a buzzkill, but it's also just one of these things where this is clearly a made-for-TV event, I think, at this point, because it's been done so well on TV for the last decade that when you see it in person, it feels a little like, I could do without it. So clearly for Zach Harrison, it's not a big deal. He wouldn't have said, I'm going to skip this if he thought it was a big deal, but it's a big deal for me because I wanted to watch him run and I wanted to see people get excited about that possibility when you look at a player like him. And I guess we'll wait another I don't know, a month to see that at Ohio State.
Yeah, so later on Friday, Ronnie Hickman and Cameron Brown are scheduled for their workouts.
Oh, yeah. Got my days confused.
Yeah.
Third time today I've not known what day it is.
Yeah, today's definitely Friday, right?
Yes.
It's Freaky Friday.
Yes.
On the Podcast Daily. Cam Brown, he said his goal was to run a 4.2 Berm. Now that would be freaky and that would be a show.
Yeah, I think that's unrealistic. That's just my opinion. We'll talk more about that with Cameron later, I'm sure. But the reality is that if Cam goes out there and runs a 4.35, that's just as good as running a 4.27, probably for a guy like him who, the question is not, are you fast? Everyone knows he's fast. The question is, can you stay on the field long enough to make an impact for an NFL program? So a franchise, it's so weird that we call it a college program and an NFL franchise. And then like rookies and freshmen, it's always these weird things. But for Cam and for Ronnie Hickman both, they're just going to want to go out there and show that they are athletically gifted. And we know that it sounds like a given, obviously, but for someone like Ronnie, who his entire career was sort of like he's a cerebral safety. He's not 6'4", he's not a 4'3" guy, but like he's going to go out there and get a chance to really show some things. And he talked on Thursday about how some teams are talking about where he can play in the defense, and he's talked to other teams about how he's played for 3 defensive coordinators in 4 years, and feels like he can adjust and fit in wherever. But it is a big day, and that's, again, I go back to Zach Harrison. Like, it's sort of weird that you don't take full advantage of that opportunity if you're capable. So let me add that asterisk once again.
Yeah, and I think targeting the combine experience for Cam Brown was just as a matter of comparison. Like, again, we'll find out more from Zach moving forward about what went into that decision. And some people only want to do it at Pro Day. They're more comfortable with that, and like lots of things can go into that. But when Cam Brown decided not to play in the Shrine Bowl, he had a practice or two where he turned heads and people saw what he could do. They really liked what he was doing. Like, we didn't need to play in the game at that point. Like, that's another decision that you make, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. But his was also pointing towards, okay, well, what's really important for Cam was to be ready to go run a 40 time in here and to pass all of his medical tests, MRIs and x-rays, which he did over the last couple of days. He said it was a long process. I believe the first day when he got here, it was like 6 hours of medical evaluations. He had some more that he had to do on Thursday morning, made him run a little late. He was the last one to do media availability on Thursday, which gave him the full spectrum, the full spotlight. He was the only one in there talking. A lot of shiny reflections off of that.
Yeah, massive. It was a massive opportunity, though. So.
Yeah, with that new padlock chain that he was wearing. But it's all designed to be ready for the opportunity where you think it's the most important. For Zach Harrison, clearly he didn't think that was in Indianapolis for the Combine, but for Cam Brown, we know that it will be on Friday. Is that quite to that extent for Ronnie Hickman? I'm not sure, because I think that out of everybody who came in here this week, and we've talked about CJ Stroud and his decision to throw, not throw, he's going to, how significant that, but he's trying to be the number one pick. There's so much variance for where Cam Brown could be picked. Like, had to pass the medicals, did that, checked that box off, and now some of the weight is off, the pressure's off his shoulders, and then he gets to go work out. And he can go from someone there, all right, I don't know, is he going to be healthy? No, he's healthy. Is he going to be a 6th-round pick? No, he could be, if he runs 4.2, like he's saying, even if he runs anything sub 4.4, you're talking about somebody that's going to shoot up who once had first-round projections.
And, we heard rumors today that Jackson Smith-Njigba may not run on Saturday. So we'll see. I mean, a lot of these guys are making personal decisions, and that's what this is about. And that's one of the things that Cam Brown said today, is that the biggest adjustment for him after leaving Ohio State is that now he's got to make all these decisions by himself. There's not a team of people really that are saying, okay, don't do this, be here, be there. And that is an adjustment. And this process will shed a lot of light on the guys that are really ready for that. So, as we mentioned on the Thursday episode of The Daily, which is talking about who are those guys talking about at Ohio State? Who's the next? And not surprisingly, when asked about the next wave of guys, Ronnie Hickman brought up the name that everyone has been talking about and thinking about for the last few months, Josh Proctor, who is returned to Ohio State. It's weird when we talk about it because we're looking at Lathan Ransom. There's obviously this excitement for the implementation of Sonny Styles and Kai Stokes. There's the addition of Jihad Carter. There's Cameron Martinez. There's a lot of guys that are like, hey, and then there's Josh Proctor, who when we had our media day on February 1st with Ohio State coaching staff, Perry Eliano was raving about Josh Proctor. And then we asked today, and the first guy that really was brought up, I mean, people they sort of prod Ronnie to talk about
I did specifically.
They get prodded to talk about the young guys, but the first guy he brings up unsolicited is Josh, and how he expects Josh Proctor, who he called a freak, to be a guy that makes a difference for Ohio State. And I really hope that's the case, because he's been there, I think, since 2002. He was on the national championship team 21 years ago. And so now you have the opportunity. I'm not good at math. You have an opportunity really for Josh to set the stage to be a guy here next year that is turning heads for people.
Yeah, I think that, and Josh Proctor is made for this event, by the way.
Right, similar to Zach Harrison.
He would test off the charts in every single way. And so I guess I've come full circle on this. That's probably not correct. I'm done a 180 perhaps, maybe.
Half circle?
More. Yeah, half circle.
Geometry.
I'm trying not to get too carried away with this offseason's hype with Josh Proctor, because I've done that. And all of you who've been paying attention to our coverage of Josh Proctor for the last 5 years, and it hasn't quite materialized. So, is this year different? I don't know. I hope for his sake it is. I hope that Ohio State and Josh Proctor and Perry Eliano finally get what they have all seen for many, many years out of him, and several other coaches and several other staffs that haven't been able to fully find that role and help him understand the way that he can best maximize that potential. And to your point, I said, well, what about some of the other guys turning heads? And he said, this is Ronnie's words, You mean like the not starters, the non-starters? I'm like, well, yeah, I think we all want to know about Sonny and Kai. And, he had some interesting things to say about it, because I'm trying to figure out, and I have been for several weeks, like, who's the person who's most likely to replace Ronnie Hickman? And, he said, well, Sonny Styles has the bigger build. He can play in the box and stop the run. We know that Kai Stokes is a little bit more of that rangy sort of, Malik Hooker guy who can patrol there in the back. And, said both guys, he felt like they were interchangeable. I don't know how true that really is with them physically. I suppose we'll see, but it wasn't the conversation I thought we were going to have about the safeties.
Well, I mean, it just goes to show that Ohio State is really trying to piece this all together. If you want to be a safety-driven defense, then you need to have multiple guys that can do multiple things, and they do, but it's a lot of unproven guys, and so we expect to see Lathan Ransom be the sort of the rock in the middle of that. But if you were to stack them up in an event like this, physically, Lathan Ransom would probably be like the 5th or 6th one that you'd pick out of the lineup. So it is, I mean, I guess my head is spinning in this sort of circumstance because we're seeing guys at other schools, right? Younger, lower level schools other than Ohio State. And you're like, man, that's a freak. That dude's doing a lot of these guys at Ohio State, like, it becomes so commonplace to see exceptional, ridiculous athletes that it's like, who cares? But then you see the ones that, even at Ohio State, that are transcendent even to their teammates. Guys like Josh, guys like Zach Harrison, who you expect then, like, that they would be great players, and they haven't. And Josh hasn't been that. Zach had his ups and downs. I mean, he played fairly well. We were obviously more pro Zach Harrison in the last 2 years than I think a lot of people were. I thought he played fine.
He played better than fine, but
missed some sacks that people would have liked to see, but I don't think he was a player that people should have been down on. But when you do see the physical attributes, like, wow, that guy should be a guy everyone in the country is talking about.
Well, I think that's why this comes up after the combine every year, right? I mean, the workout warriors, they get fixed with that tag, and some people are like, well, they're shooting up the board because of the way they worked out. Like, it shouldn't trump the tape.
Yeah.
Zach Harrison does have good enough tape over 4 years that I think you can see, and that you know that the talent evaluators believe that he can be an NFL player. He already had some of the measurable stuff. Was this going to prove it even more than even going back 4 years to watching him run track as a high school senior? I mean, probably wasn't going to do a great deal of good for him. I do think that works more to the advantage of some others, but, like, we say, well, why are you only paying attention to the combine and not the film?
Yeah.
Like, so that's the juxtaposition. It's interesting when you Cam Brown did not single out any of the corners. That's been sort of the fun thing of getting to talk to these guys again after a couple of months. They leave, they might have a little bit more truth serum in them than when they're being watched for their comments by the program. And I thought Kim's take on the cornerback room was interesting, and it was like, Denzel Burke has got to lead that group, and he said he's got a different mentality coming into this year. That's critical. We've talked about that. It's more, I think physically that was a problem, combined with not being able to practice. And then I think he did get a little bit, too carried away with what happened in that breakout freshman year and had a lot of other things that were on his plate. That's pretty obvious how that's going to be difficult for people to manage. And if he's got that straightened out, that's good. But then he said, well, there's a lot of depth. He's not going to pick anybody out of Jordan Hancock, Jair Brown, Ryan Turner down the road. He's hoping, I guess, that the depth of that room will elevate all of them, and that it may be a different situation than a year ago.
And it's also difficult for guys because someone like Cam Brown, who was practicing half the time, you're watching your teammates go, but you're not really getting a full sense of what they're capable of. You're seeing work ethic, you're seeing how committed they are to things, but they don't know. Once these guys leave the program, the day after the Georgia game, they're like, I don't know anything that's happening at Ohio State anymore. So, I think the most interesting thing for me today, if we're talking takeaways from conversation, was that Cam Brown and a lot of people who follow Ohio State closely have been questioning Tim Walton and whether or not that addition has been as beneficial for Ohio State as they thought it would be. And when you hear a guy like Cam Brown talk about Tim Walton, who he said changed his life, and we've talked to him privately, doing the Dream Chasers series, he raves about Tim Walton and what type of coach he is and what he's done for him. And we've seen the same thing from other cornerbacks at Ohio State too. And so this is just me cautioning or asking Ohio State fans, saying, be patient. Let a guy get a chance to work with his room when there's actually, enough healthy bodies out there to run a full practice. And and you'll see if there's actually a difference in that room, because I think there will be. I was very high on the corners heading into last season, and then all of them got hurt. And, that is an explanation for some of the struggles, but nobody wants excuses, and you want to work hard and no excuses. And that's how you become a no-bull athlete sponsoring the NFL Combine. But
he got his talking points down to a T. Unbelievable
the fact
job.
Is you just have to have guys that are healthy enough to play. This spring's huge for Ohio State, obviously at corner. And I don't think Cam Brown is going to really, he's not going to go out and say, hey, this guy sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be weird if he did, but it'd be helpful.
Well, it would be super helpful. I think that's why you have to pay more attention to who's the first one they name. We talked about that on Thursday. Like Caden Curry brought up instantly by Zach Harrison. That's been going down. Last year, I remember it was burned in my brain. The first person that Thayer Munford said when we talked about the offensive line said Josh Fryer. Like, that didn't immediately pay off dividends.
Because he got hurt.
Sometimes it's down the road but it's something to keep in mind, because the guys that impress the teammates the most, there's generally a very good reason for that. They have no incentive to play favorites. They're not on that roster anymore. They want what's best for Ohio State. So, who they say, who they don't say, I think it's usually pretty significant, at least going into spring ball. We're going to get to watch that in person on two different occasions, on Tuesday and Thursday during the first week of spring practice. So, we don't have to solely rely on word of mouth, which is great, or who we talk to maybe inside the Woody who could help shine some light. Like, those things are all informative, not as much as your own eyes, but like, it does carry weight when your teammates who have no reason to blow smoke when you're in Indianapolis and they're starting on their own professional career. I know they probably don't love being asked to look back at Ohio State and talk about their teammates when they're starting that process. I know you don't love that.
Yeah, I don't particularly understand it, but that's just me. And this is the Podcast Daily. We're going to talk about things that are on my mind. And I don't understand why there's a lot of conversation about what guys did or how they felt about losing a game 2 months ago. Like, I don't care about that anymore. They don't care about it. They want to know what the Chiefs think about them. And that's what should be important here. I get it. It's fun to get some insight. But as I said, most of these guys, the minute they leave campus, their brains turn off about that entire experience. They're not like sitting there going, back when I was an Ohio State football player 60 days ago, they don't care. Like, it's not a thought in their mind at all.
It is. Come on.
It's not.
They don't turn it completely off.
They do. These 2 months, like, if they're thinking about, I sure do miss the nachos in the food wing of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, like, if that's what they're thinking about, then they're missing the opportunity to get ready for the NFL, and that's what they come to Ohio State for. So I don't think, I think we've talked.
How did you happen to pick nachos?
I had some really good nachos inside while we were waiting for Zach Harrison to work out. Then he didn't work out, but I still got the nachos, and that's what's important. But what I'm saying is, these guys, when we talk to like Jordan Fuller or Terry McLaurin or guys, like, they're much more interested in Ohio State now than they were right when they left.
Yeah.
Because these last 2 months and this next month and a half are the most important time of their entire life. So I think that asking them to say, what did you think about this guy and his work ethic when we had somebody ask Cam Brown about Devin Brown. I'm like, I don't think he ever practiced at the same time as Devin Brown, because he was.
That was the biggest reach of the week so far.
You're not playing against the
scout team.
Cam Brown's not playing against the scout team in practice, and Cam Brown missed.
He also
half
wasn't
the
practicing at all. So
it's like, I think I get it. I know people are like begging for content, and we are too. The last month has been rough, folks. It has been rough, but we're doing the best we can, and that's what's important.
I mean, I can't stand here and pretend like I'm not participating in some of that, because I know that
sure.
Ohio State fans are also starving for information, and it's been difficult for us to provide that sustenance.
Yes.
And I want to so badly.
Feed me.
But I didn't ask Cam Brown about Devin Brown because I knew that was...
Yeah, that one didn't make sense. But that is what happens at the Combine.
Yeah.
And folks, if you want to come to the Combine next year...
Don't.
You can, but don't, because there's no reason to at all. And I regret it immediately because, as we said on Thursday's show, I'd never been to the Combine before. I was thinking this is going to be pretty hip, pretty neato. It's not. It's not neato. It's not hip. It's not keen. It's none of those words.
Yeah.
Not the bee's knees. Not the cat's pajamas. I don't even like it at all. But I do like talking about football. So
we got to do that.
I guess I'm glad I get to do that.
Yeah, on a Freaky Friday episode of the podcast.
Getting colder out here.
Yeah, it sure is.
Storm coming.
Yeah. as you can tell here on a super frigid Friday morning. Wink. All right, let's get out of here then. So CJ Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba will be on the microphone on Friday morning.
We're going to try to run those live on the YouTube channel. I don't know if they're going to work because the internet in the convention center is not good at all. So we will.
It chose not to work out.
Yeah, we will determine. Yeah, it opted out of this
of the combine.
So we'll see how that runs, but we will definitely have those on the YouTube channel on Friday at some point. OhioState.rivals.com. We'll have some feedback from Austin on each of those situations. We've got Bill Landis's thoughts on every Ohio State offensive player heading into spring ball on the site on Friday morning. That's something you're going to want to read. Use promo code DTE30 for a free month to join us over there and keep on rocking in the free world. Spring ball is here. This is the final episode of the Podcast Daily for the week, right? It's Friday now?
Yeah. So we'll have to just...
Flaming hot Cheeto bag has just crept up Austin's leg. That's wild.
How did it stick to me?
It was like, I mean, it seemed as if it had a mind of its own, but it didn't.
Wild scene. Yeah, so spring ball is Tuesday. So
we keep moving over. Have you noticed that?
Is that right?
Yeah, we gotta stop doing that.
Whoops. All right, anyway, he's Birmingham, Austin. Thanks for joining us. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you later.